A silent, uneasy quiet, heavy with an unspoken premonition, had settled over the meticulously manicured lawns and stately homes of a quiet, affluent Jupiter, Florida neighborhood on the crisp, temperate morning of March 21st, 2020. The air, typically vibrant with the sounds of early spring, now carried a subtle, almost imperceptible hum of anxiety that permeated daily life. The world outside, a vast, anxious entity, was just beginning its tentative and uncertain engagement with the terrifying, rapidly unfolding global pandemic. A strange, almost surreal atmosphere permeated daily life, a disquieting backdrop that would soon intertwine inextricably with a deeply personal and horrifying tragedy for one unsuspecting family, forever altering their sense of peace and security. Gretchen Anthony, a vibrant and energetic 51-year-old woman, was a woman of routine, responsibility, and deep connections, known throughout her community for her sharp wit, her unwavering vitality, her meticulous organizational skills, her consistent communication, and her deeply cherished connections to her network of friends, family, and colleagues. She was a person of immense reliability. On that particular Friday, she had a full, carefully planned day ahead. She was expected to meet a beloved friend for a casual lunch, a routine and comforting part of her social week, a small moment of normalcy in an increasingly abnormal world. Later, she was scheduled to report promptly and reliably to her demanding and responsible position at a local utility company, where she held a significant management role, a testament to her dedication, capability, and professional acumen. Yet, as the hours of the tranquil spring day slowly unwound, marked only by the gentle rustling of palm fronds in the intermittent breeze and the distant muted sounds of suburban life, Gretchen did neither. She missed her lunch appointment without a word, and her usual punctual arrival at work never materialized. An absence, subtle at first, a single missed call here, a slightly delayed text message reply there, began insidiously to grow into a profound and gnawing concern among her extensive network of devoted friends, her close and trusting colleagues, and most urgently, her worried family members, who were intimately accustomed to her consistent communication and her utterly reliable presence in their lives. Her sudden, inexplicable silence, so uncharacteristic of her meticulous nature, was immediately, instinctively, alarmingly out of place. Her family's profound unease deepened considerably by March 23rd, a mere 2 agonizing days after her initial and inexplicable silence began to loom larger and more sinister. Text messages purportedly originating from Gretchen's personal cell phone began to circulate erratically, sporadically, and with an increasing, almost frantic urgency among her bewildered loved ones. These digital missives painted a rapidly deteriorating and alarmingly formal picture, starkly different from Gretchen's usual warm, empathetic, and personal tone. Gretchen, they claimed with an unsettlingly detached prose, had tested positive for the novel coronavirus and was experiencing an acute severe case, far worse and more aggressive than anything they had heard about from others grappling with the initial frightening wave of the pandemic. The texts, which seemed to arrive at odd hours of the day and night, and with an uncharacteristic, almost impersonal tone that simply did not sound like the Gretchen they knew, described her rapid progression from being self-quarantined at her meticulously clean and orderly home to being admitted, seemingly without warning or prior discussion, to Jupiter Medical Center, then, just as rapidly, moved to intensive care as her condition allegedly worsened dramatically and uncontrollably. Alarming and increasingly desperate updates followed, often vague and lacking specificity, hinting at a medically induced coma and ultimately a secretive, almost clandestine, transfer to a specialized Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC facility, purportedly located in Belle Glade, Florida, a remote rural area specifically designated for critically ill COVID-19 patients. The narrative was elaborate, detailed, and utterly convincing to those not yet aware of the sinister undercurrent, playing cunningly on the widespread fear and confusion surrounding the early days of the pandemic. By the morning of March 25th, just 4 days after her initial disappearance, the flurry of frantic, often confusing, and increasingly bizarre messages abruptly ceased, leaving behind an unsettling void and a chorus of terrifyingly unanswered questions that echoed with growing dread in the minds of her family, deepening their profound sense of fear and helplessness as the silence became absolute. The story, however, contained perplexing, deeply troubling, and ultimately fatal inconsistencies that immediately triggered blaring red flags for Gretchen's discerning and intelligent family. Despite their repeated desperate pleas and growing anxiety for more information, specific doctors, contact numbers, exact locations, they had never been given the precise name or even a verifiable address of this mysterious, supposedly specialized CDC facility. The very idea of such a facility, shrouded in secrecy and demanding complete isolation for their loved one in a time of global crisis, seemed inherently suspicious and out of step with established medical protocols. When Gretchen's sister, who resided hundreds of miles away in New Jersey and was desperate for concrete answers in a time when hospital visitation was severely restricted due to the burgeoning pandemic, contacted the Jupiter Police Department to express her profound concerns and the mounting discrepancies in the narrative. A deeper, more rigorous, and ultimately grim investigation was swiftly initiated. Authorities quickly learned a critical and alarming detail that completely shattered the meticulously fabricated narrative. Jupiter Medical Center had absolutely no record of Gretchen Anthony ever being admitted or treated within their facility. Her name simply did not exist in their extensive patient logs, a fact that resonated like a chilling pronouncement of a terrible deception. Furthermore, a thorough and immediate search by law enforcement, utilizing all available resources and databases, revealed with undeniable certainty that no specialized CDC facility or any medical center capable of treating critically ill COVID-19 patients existed in Belle Glade, Florida, or anywhere else nearby. The elaborate and increasingly desperate story spun through the text messages began to unravel with chilling speed and crushing finality, exposing itself not as a tragic medical emergency, but as a meticulously constructed and deeply sinister fabrication designed solely to conceal a far more malevolent and violent truth. The sudden, prolonged silence from Gretchen's phone was now understood to be an ominous sign, not of illness, but of a more permanent, forced quietude, a chilling silence that spoke volumes. Compounding the growing mystery and deepening suspicion, Gretchen's distinctive car, a compact Mini Cooper, was located seemingly abandoned in the sprawling and busy parking lot of Jupiter Medical Center. The vehicle appeared to have been deliberately placed there, a calculated effort to maintain the illusion of illness and hospitalization, cunningly designed to direct attention away from the true crime scene. Inside the vehicle, her purse lay conspicuously in plain view on the passenger seat, an unusual and deeply disquieting sight that immediately hinted at a hurried and uncharacteristic abandonment, as Gretchen was known for her meticulous habits and would never have left her personal belongings so carelessly exposed, especially not in a public place. A more thorough and forensic examination of the vehicle, conducted with painstaking care by trained crime scene technicians wearing protective gear, revealed a profoundly disturbing detail that hinted at recent violence. Microscopic but undeniable traces of human blood had been detected on both the steering wheel and the gear shift, subtle but irrefutable evidence of a struggle or injury that had occurred within the confines of the vehicle, staining the pristine interior with a grim secret. The discovery, meticulously documented and preserved, confirmed the growing suspicions of foul play. Gretchen Anthony was no longer merely a sick person confined by illness. She was a missing person under highly suspicious and deeply disturbing circumstances, her disappearance now firmly categorized as a potential homicide, a chilling realization that sent shivers through the investigating team and confirmed their darkest fears, pivoting the case into a far more sinister realm. The focus of the rapidly intensifying investigation quickly shifted from the car to Gretchen's meticulously kept residence on Circle Drive, a home that now held an eerie and oppressive stillness, transformed from a sanctuary into a silent witness to unseen horrors. What began as a routine welfare check rapidly transformed into a full-scale missing persons and potential homicide investigation, as the gravity of the situation became undeniably clear to the seasoned detectives who entered the scene. Upon careful entry into the home, executed with precision and caution to preserve any fragile evidence, investigators were met with a scene that spoke volumes of a recent and brutal confrontation, a stark and unsettling contrast to the quiet, manicured suburban street outside. A large, ornate picture frame, likely a cherished family memento, lay shattered on the living room floor, its glass fragments and wooden splinters scattered haphazardly like shrapnel from an explosion. Shards of glass were found not only on the living room floor, but disturbingly on Gretchen's bed in the master bedroom, suggesting a violent struggle that had extended beyond a single room, a desperate, violent confrontation that had moved through the house in its terrifying final moments. A stained towel, visibly discolored with what appeared to be dark, dried liquid, rested ominously on the washing machine in the laundry area, later testing positive for a human blood-like substance, grimly confirming the violent nature of the events that had transpired there. The garage floor and the adjacent concrete driveway bore distinct telltale streaks, as if a large quantity of potent bleach or another powerful chemical cleaning agent had been used in a desperate, hurried, and ultimately futile attempt to erase incriminating evidence, a frantic effort to cleanse the scene of its horrific stains. An overpowering, pungent, and acrid odor of chemical cleaning agents permeated the entire air inside the garage, stinging the nostrils of the investigators and serving as an unsettling testament to the frantic cleanup effort that had taken place, a desperate attempt to erase the memory of violence. The entry door leading from the patio into the garage was found securely locked, with a key broken off precisely in the deadbolt, suggesting either a struggle to secure the door from within, perhaps to trap someone inside, or a desperate attempt to prevent entry or exit from the outside, indicating a planned act of confinement or escape prevention. Perhaps most unsettling and deeply indicative of a premeditated effort to conceal the truth and destroy any incriminating evidence was the discovery that the brand new security cameras, meticulously installed inside the home by Gretchen herself just weeks prior to enhance her sense of personal security, had been crudely ripped from the walls, their wiring torn and exposed, leaving gaping holes where they once provided vigilant oversight. The deliberate absence of these devices spoke volumes of a calculated attempt at concealment, an act of a perpetrator aware of surveillance. As the police methodically canvassed the quiet neighborhood on March 26, a staggering 5 agonizing days after Gretchen was last seen or heard from by anyone other than through the suspicious and fabricated text messages, a critical and profoundly chilling piece of the puzzle finally emerged, providing the first real glimpse into the terrifying events that had unfolded. A neighbor, visibly distraught and trembling with the raw, visceral memory of what they had witnessed, cautiously approached an officer with a harrowing and incredibly detailed account. On the morning of March 21st, shortly after 6 a.m., just as the first hints of dawn were breaking and the birds were beginning their morning chorus, a blood-curdling scream had pierced the serene early morning quiet from the direction of Gretchen Anthony's patio. The neighbor, unable to shake the terrifying sound from their mind, recounted hearing a woman cry out with raw terror and unmistakable pain, specifically the horrifying words, "No, no, it hurts." The screaming, the neighbor stated, had continued for a horrifying few minutes, a protracted and agonizing struggle that suggested a desperate fight for life, before abruptly ceasing, leaving an unnatural, terrifying silence in its wake that lingered oppressively in the still morning air, a silence that spoke of finality. Another neighbor corroborated hearing the distressing screams, and perhaps more tellingly, recalled seeing a black Nissan pickup truck, its bed conspicuously loaded with something large and conspicuously covered with a dark tarp, parked very conspicuously near Gretchen's house that same night, well after the violent incident had occurred. The truck was quickly identified as belonging to David Anthony, Gretchen's estranged husband, casting an immediate and deeply sinister pall over his involvement and cementing him as the prime suspect in the rapidly unfolding mystery. David Anthony, whose birth name was David Anthony Deutsch, was a 44-year-old fitness trainer with a complex, deeply troubled, and increasingly violent personal history that stretched back decades. His marriage to Gretchen, which had begun 5 years earlier in March 2015, had become increasingly tumultuous, fraught with arguments, financial strain, and tension, marked by a recent and bitter separation in December 2019, and Gretchen had formally filed for divorce in February 2020, a mere few short weeks before her inexplicable disappearance, clearly signaling her desire to end the volatile and increasingly unbearable relationship. Authorities quickly identified David as not just a person of interest, but the central figure in their rapidly intensifying investigation. His erratic behavior, documented history of violence, and recent job loss making him stand out starkly against the backdrop of the quiet community. His past revealed a deeply unsettling pattern of volatile behavior and repeated criminal infractions, hinting at a long-standing struggle with impulse control, aggression, and a troubling disregard for societal norms. These included a youthful arrest for holding up a Blockbuster video store with a squirt gun, a seemingly absurd act that hinted at deeper instability and a warped sense of reality, a desperate cry for attention or control, and more seriously, assaulting a police officer as a young man, demonstrating a blatant disregard for authority and the rule of law. More recently, and alarmingly close to the time of Gretchen's murder, just a week prior to her vanishing, he had been charged with resisting arrest with violence after reportedly slamming a car door on an officer's arm during an unrelated incident, a clear sign of his escalating aggression and inability to manage his anger. Shockingly, and perhaps fatally for Gretchen, he had been released from jail on bond only 3 short days before Gretchen vanished, a chilling fact that underscored the immediate and grave danger she may have been in, completely unbeknownst to her, a predator freed to roam. Investigators delved deeper into David's life, systematically uncovering that his financial situation was not merely precarious, but desperately dire, a contributing factor to his mounting stress, paranoia, and increasingly erratic behavior. He had been abruptly fired from his job as a fitness instructor in 2017, then briefly rehired in 2020, only to be summarily fired again just before Gretchen's disappearance, leaving him utterly jobless, completely broke, and increasingly agitated, fueling his desperation and sense of victimhood. His former manager, recognizing the severity of David's instability and unpredictable nature, had even taken the unusual step of personally warning Gretchen to stay away from him, bluntly describing him as crazy and unpredictable, a chillingly prophetic premonition of the brutal violence to come. Family members, when interviewed by detectives, revealed that David had been suffering from undiagnosed and untreated bipolar disorder for years, a severe mental health condition characterized by extreme mood swings, ranging from periods of intense mania to debilitating depression. This untreated condition, combined with his increasing financial desperation and alleged past head injuries that may have impacted his cognitive functions, may have significantly exacerbated his increasingly erratic, paranoid, and ultimately violent behavior, creating a dangerous and volatile cocktail of instability. This confluence of factors painted a grim and terrifying picture of a man spiraling rapidly and uncontrollably out of control, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. The twisted and chilling motive for Gretchen's murder, as David later bizarrely claimed in his deeply unsettling confession, was born from a profoundly distorted and delusional perspective on the burgeoning COVID-19 pandemic. He perceived the global health crisis not as a scientific phenomenon to be managed with caution, but as an end-of-the-world prophecy, a literal Armageddon from which he felt an urgent, almost messianic need to escape, believing himself privy to some secret cosmic truth. He became convinced that their salvation lay in fleeing to Costa Rica, believing they could find refuge and survive the impending global collapse there, a desperate, fantastical delusion that consumed his thoughts. He had even meticulously planned their escape route, detailing a journey to drive to Mexico and then fly to South America, fully believing in this delusional scenario as their only chance for survival, when Gretchen, practical, rational, and firmly grounded in reality, unequivocally declined his desperate and fantastical plea to abandon her established life, her meaningful work, and her beloved family, to flee with him to a foreign country. David's warped intentions turned irrevocably sinister and violent. Her refusal, perceived by him as a rejection of their shared survival, ignited a furious rage. In the early hours of March 21st, 2020, under the cloak of pre-dawn darkness, David, clad in dark, inconspicuous clothing, stealthily entered Gretchen's meticulously kept home, having reportedly obtained a key by undisclosed means, or perhaps having copied one previously during their marriage, gaining access without forced entry. Surveillance footage, miraculously preserved through an unseen digital failsafe, would later capture him lurking ominously on her patio, a shadowy figure waiting patiently in ambush, a predator patiently stalking his unsuspecting prey in the deceptive comfort of her own home, his malevolent intentions hidden in the shadows. The crucial evidence that would speak from beyond the grave, allowing Gretchen Anthony to, in a profound and unsettling way, solve her own murder, came from Gretchen herself, albeit through the very technology she had installed for her security and peace of mind. Investigators, working tirelessly and with painstaking attention to detail, obtained crucial court permission to retrieve invaluable data from Gretchen's personal cloud storage accounts and, crucially, her Amazon Alexa devices, which silently recorded ambient sounds within her home. The digital forensics proved devastating and utterly irrefutable, completely dismantling David Anthony's meticulously constructed facade of lies and elaborate deceptions. Audio recordings, chillingly preserved from Gretchen's Alexa devices, captured her final desperate cries for help, faint but undeniable echoes of a brutal struggle that unfolded within her own home. These audio fragments provided a horrifying timeline and concrete confirmation of the violent assault, a sound record of her last moments that defied any denial. Even more damning, and perhaps the single most critical piece of physical and digital evidence, was the Blink security camera footage. Though David, in his frantic and desperate attempts to erase his crime, had physically removed the security cameras from the walls of Gretchen's home, believing he had destroyed all evidence, the video footage had already been automatically uploaded to the cloud, a digital sanctuary beyond his reach and control, rendering his efforts futile and his actions irreversibly recorded. The chilling images, precisely time-stamped and remarkably clear, revealed a tall, recognizable figure, undeniably David, lurking menacingly on Gretchen's patio, observing her movements with cold, predatory calculation. The video documented with horrifying clarity the precise moment he lunged and grabbed Gretchen, forcibly muffled her terrified screams to silence her, and then dragged her, struggling desperately, into the garage where the final horrific act of violence took place, away from any other prying eyes. At one particularly unsettling point in the footage, David was captured looking directly into a camera lens, a moment of unsettling self-awareness, perhaps even a fleeting sense of perverse triumph, before he then proceeded to forcibly dismantle the devices, utterly unaware that their silent digital witnesses had already broadcast his crime to the digital ether, sealing his fate with undeniable proof that could not be erased. With this irrefutable and deeply disturbing digital evidence now firmly in hand, police had clear, undeniable, and overwhelming proof connecting David Anthony directly to Gretchen's disappearance and her presumed murder. As the investigation intensified and the net began to close rapidly around him, David had already initiated his desperate and ill-conceived flight. His personal cell phone signals, meticulously tracked by vigilant law enforcement agencies across multiple states, provided a precise and incriminating digital breadcrumb trail, tracing his erratic and hurried movements across 6 states, steadily westward, drawing ever closer to the heavily guarded Mexican border, his intended escape route to flee prosecution and disappear completely into obscurity. Along his frantic cross-country journey, driven by desperation and a rapidly dwindling supply of cash, he made multiple stops at various jewelry stores, callously selling Gretchen's precious possessions, including jewelry and other valuable items, fabricating elaborate and cold-hearted stories about the previous owner having tragically died from COVID-19 as a flimsy cover for his illicit transactions. These opportunistic sales, meticulously documented by pawn shop records and traceable by police, provided him with the dwindling funds necessary to continue his desperate attempt at evasion and to maintain his increasingly flimsy cover story, allowing him to travel almost 2,000 miles before his luck finally ran out. On March 31st, 2020, after a cross-country manhunt spanning nearly 2,000 miles and several days of intense coordinated pursuit by law enforcement, David Anthony was finally apprehended. He was discovered by vigilant officers walking his husky dog, seemingly with an air of casual indifference that starkly belied his true circumstances, at a gas station in Las Cruces, New Mexico, just a perilous few miles from the Mexican border. His elaborate plans to flee to South America, a last-ditch effort to disappear completely and escape justice, were abruptly and decisively thwarted by the persistent efforts of detectives who had followed his digital trail. He was immediately arrested and initially charged with the severe crimes of first-degree murder and kidnapping, facing the full, uncompromising weight of the law. a stark and sudden end to his desperate flight. During his initial interrogation following his capture, David stubbornly maintained his fantastical claims that Gretchen was still alive and well, alleging with increasing desperation that she was on the run because she had supposedly uncovered illegal activities at her workplace and consequently feared for her life, a baseless and cruel fabrication. He bizarrely insisted she had been traveling with him to El Paso, Texas, before they supposedly separated, a convoluted and increasingly unbelievable narrative designed solely to mislead and obfuscate the truth from his interrogators, showing his continued detachment from reality and a desperate clinging to his lies. However, the overwhelming weight of the physical and digital evidence, particularly the irrefutable Blink security camera footage capturing his violent assault and the chilling Alexa recordings of Gretchen's final cries, left no room whatsoever for his elaborate and desperate lies. Despite the strength of their case, prosecutors faced a significant tactical challenge: the lingering absence of Gretchen's body. Without her remains, securing a swift and undeniable conviction for first-degree murder could be more complex, potentially leading to lengthy, costly, and emotionally draining legal battles that would prolong the family's suffering and delay true closure indefinitely. David Anthony, despite his capture and the mounting evidence against him, possessed the critical leverage investigators desperately needed: the sole, horrifying knowledge of Gretchen's final resting place. A difficult but ultimately necessary plea agreement was eventually negotiated between the prosecution and David's legal team. This decision, while controversial to some who sought the harshest possible punishment, was made with the primary goal of bringing Gretchen home and providing her family with the closure they so desperately needed. In exchange for a reduced charge of second-degree murder and kidnapping, David Anthony agreed, as a crucial and non-negotiable part of the deal, to reveal the precise location of Gretchen's remains, bringing a measure of vital peace and closure to her grieving and tormented family. This plea bargain, a painful but pragmatic decision driven by the collective desire for closure and certain justice, circumvented the need for a protracted and potentially uncertain trial and guaranteed a conviction, providing some semblance of peace amidst their profound sorrow. On December 21st, 2020, exactly 9 agonizing months after she first disappeared, and just days before Christmas, casting a grim shadow over the holiday season, Gretchen Anthony's remains were finally recovered. David Anthony, under the watchful, unblinking eyes of law enforcement, led authorities to a nondescript patch of overgrown, grassy land, a quiet, forgotten corner approximately 3 miles from her Jupiter home. The location was starkly mundane and unsettlingly close to civilization, nestled inconspicuously behind a bustling Walmart superstore and directly adjacent to a tranquil retirement community, a chilling juxtaposition of vibrant commercial life and the somber hidden reality of death. Forensic examination of her remains confirmed the horrific brutality of her murder. She had sustained multiple stab wounds to her neck and torso, the true and undeniable cause of her death, consistent with the violence captured on video, providing a final grim confirmation of the crime. During the recovery process, an unexpected and tragically poignant detail emerged, adding another layer to the narrative of her hidden death. A tip had been called in months prior from a vigilant man living in Jupiter who reported strange, sickly sweet smells and the unusual disturbing presence of buzzards circling persistently in an area less than 3 miles from the eventual discovery site of Gretchen's shallow grave. He remembered a horrible, like hot rotting smell as he drove home from work, a detail that now tragically connected to the final hidden moments of Gretchen Anthony, suggesting her body had been at that location, concealed by her killer, for a significant period of time. a silent testament to David's prolonged cruelty and his calculated attempts to evade detection. On January 14, 2021, David Anthony, his face remarkably devoid of discernible emotion, stood before the court in Palm Beach County for his sentencing, finally facing the legal consequences of his monstrous actions. He received a substantial sentence of 38 years in prison, a severe consequence that meant he would spend the vast majority, if not all, of his remaining life incarcerated, stripped of his freedom, and confined by the bars of justice. During the hearing, he offered a bizarre, rambling, and self-serving explanation for his heinous actions, maintaining, with an air of unrepentant delusion, that his illusions of the COVID-19 pandemic as an apocalyptic event had compelled him to commit the crime, attempting desperately to rationalize the irrational and evade true responsibility for his calculated brutality. He admitted, with a chilling lack of genuine remorse or empathy, to choosing to be a coward, attempting to steal what wasn't mine, and in doing so, tragically ending a precious life. On a recorded jail call, a chilling glimpse into his unrepentant psyche, he left a message for his brother, claiming with disturbing nonchalance, "I know there's some bad stuff, but there's a ton of good stuff, man. Seriously, good stuff outweighs anything bad. I never did anything specific." His words continued to showcase a profound and disturbing detachment from the gravity of his actions, a chilling inability to truly acknowledge the devastating consequences he had wrought upon Gretchen and her family, remaining in a world of his own, warped perceptions. He is scheduled for release in 2058, at the age of 81, a stark and fitting end to a life ultimately defined by deception, violence, and a profound lack of accountability, a life spent largely behind bars, a testament to the fact that justice, though sometimes delayed, will eventually find its way. The tragic case of Gretchen Anthony stands as a stark and unsettling reminder of the long reach of the past, the insidious nature of hidden violence lurking beneath the surface of normalcy, and the unexpected and often miraculous ways in which truth can surface even from the deepest and most desperate attempts at concealment. Her final desperate moments, captured by the very technology David so frantically sought to destroy in his futile effort to erase his crime, ultimately provided the irrefutable and damning evidence that brought her killer to justice. It was a poignant and powerful testament to how, even in her tragic and violent absence, Gretchen Anthony, through her foresight in installing security cameras and the indelible digital traces she unknowingly left behind, played a crucial and undeniable role in solving her own brutal murder, securing a measure of vital peace and desperately needed resolution for her grieving and resilient family. Her vigilance, even in her last moments, ensured that her voice, though physically silenced, would still be heard, echoing through the digital realm to bring her justice and ensure her story was told, a lasting legacy of her strength in the face of unimaginable terror.